Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I'm Ron Luce, joined by Mr. Joey Ricotta. We got a lot of news to talk about today, buddy. We were talking a little bit pre-show as well. We're both on cloud nine. It's been a good 24 hours in Chicago sports, but outside of our good old favorite teams in the city of Chicago, my friend, how are you on this Sunday afternoon?
I'm great because I don't know what else there is to think about outside of our favorite Chicago sports teams. Yeah, man, I'm great. I'm happy to be here. Glad that we could jump on and do an emergency pod, even though it's not really like, an emergency at this point, but it felt like, why are we getting this news right now yesterday? Um, yeah, I'm doing well, man. How are you doing?
I'm good, man. And to your point, it's hard to focus on anything else right now when Chicago sports are in the position that they're in right now. And it's funny. I think especially from the baseball front of things, I've had a lot of conversations with a few White Sox fans over the course of the last few how and they would ask me, like how you feeling about the Cubs or what's the pulse check with the Cubs? And I'm like, I don't know. And I was like, because if you wanted to make it an argument, the White Sox technically probably had a sexier offseason up until the last week or so by netting a big NPB star like Munetaka Murakami, right? Like that was a big move for a team like the White Sox. Sure, they went out and got a couple bullpen pieces. Sean Newcomb, Cubs legend. Anthony Kay, another Cubs legend. Hilarious that those two are going to the South Side. But it felt like they had the sexier offseason. Even though I love what the Cubs had done up to this point with the bullpen. I think you got lefties in there. You addressed some critical needs. Sure, you weren't able to bring back Brad Keller, but overall, like I think we were in a great spot in general with that in what they had done. And then the Bears come back and win a beautiful football game. The Blackhawks get a big shutout on the road on the second half of a back-to-back. The Bulls take care of business at the United Center. And then, like you said, on a Saturday night, late into the evening, when everybody's more worried about the sport of football than they are the sport of baseball, the news breaks that the Cubs sign Alex Bregman. And we weren't even able to do technically our show Thursday night, which we were going to talk about Edward Cabrera being the
Mm-hmm.
newest acquisition via trade for the Chicago Cubs because Ron Luce's basement flooded, and that's why we had to reschedule the show. So it was a hell of a last, we'll call it extended weekend, I guess, at this point. But Joey, the Cubs are out here making moves, Jed. And let's start with the oldest news, and we'll get back on the track of Bregman, and then we'll just let this thing fly around. Cubs go out and get Edward Cabrera from the Marlins. Owen Casey, Christian Hernandez, and I believe it's Edgar De Leon is his name.
Yeah, De Leon. It's Edgardo, I think.
Edgardo De Leon,
Yeah.
all going to the Marlins in this trade just for Cabrera. And then the Cubs avoided arbitration with Cabrera almost immediately. I believe it's 4.45 is the exact number that he got for the 1 year from the Cubs. Again, 3 years of control for him. So 26, 27, 28 before the Cubs even have to worry about paying him big dollars. And he's only 27 years old. A great spot to be. Joey, I know we talked, and I say the collective we, those Cubs contributors here at On Tap Sports in our Slack rooms. You weren't initially kind of a fan of the Cubs trading Owen Casey, and I'd love just to kind of hear, because I think we were all big Owen Casey fans on this
Mm-hmm.
show, but I want to just kind of get into your brain and kind of like what generated that initial feeling for you.
Yeah, well, it's well, yeah, I'm kind of glad you started the conversation in this way because I like ending things on a positive note. So, I guess I'll say my fears are kind of the same fears that you have when you got rid of Kyle Schwarber. Of what could be, right?
Sure.
The potential is there. I see it. You see the power. It's a left-handed thumper that we've been missing, for a while. And you got Belly to fill in that hole for 1 year and really 2 years, but the 1 year he was a lot better with the power production than he was the other year. And then Kyle Tucker last year, so that kind of filled the void. But we haven't had somebody stable there to really fill that lefty power bat. Give you that what you need every single year, especially at Wrigley, which is hard for lefties to contribute and fight through that wind. It's just not a ballpark for lefties, really. But Casey felt like a guy that could really be that. And I mean, it sucks. It really does to think about him doing that somewhere else long term. And I didn't want it to come down to him getting traded. And the thought I have too now as I look back at this is, and I had a conversation, good conversation with a buddy of mine of like, if you were going to make this move, why couldn't you make this move during the season last year and have for the stretch run with Cabrera? Because I felt like that was a target of theirs during the season as they were looking at trade options, and if I feel like they wanted to hold back from Casey, and so what pushed them over the top to put Casey into the trade this time around during the offseason, or what made it a better deal or situation for the Cubs in their eyes? Was it just a little bit of that is maybe hindsight where they couldn't get through with what they had and they thought that they could get through with what they had? And, certain things happen like the Soroka injury.
Right.
And we'll get to Cabrera in a second and just him alone. But I do have my fears on that front still, too, with just Cabrera alone.
Sure.
But Casey, I mean, it's not like you can't give away anything to get anything good. And so I don't want to bash the trade by any means, because I feel like as we talk right now, January 11th, 2026, I can't sit here and tell you that this is a good trade for either side. And I can't tell you that it's a bad trade for either side, or if it's going to be a good trade for both sides. And I kind of feel like that has the potential to be a really good trade for both sides.
I agree.
So like, yeah, it's definitely like a little bit of, oh boy, like I'm a little nervous,
Sure.
letting that guy go out of the building. And then,
Right.
that's before also knowing what they're going to do to replace him with the Alex Bregman thing. So
definitely,
there's a lot going on here. I don't know what were your like thoughts, I guess, with the trade news and going into it?
I love your thinking in terms of within the season, and Carter Hawkins, our inside source here in the comments, at the deadlines, Marlins reportedly wanted Wiggins and Casey.
That would be a huge no-go. Yeah,
I think that's what it was, if I'm being honest with you, Joey, because I think that's a great point. Like, why, in theory, why wouldn't the Cubs have made this trade at that time? And I think you're right on both fronts. Like, I don't think your thought process is flawed at all. In fact, I think you're spot on. And I think two things can be correct in the same argument, where at the time the price didn't make sense because the Cubs, Kyle Tucker was also injured and banged up at that time, right around the deadline. So you were also probably banking on Owen Casey needing to come up and fill his spot potentially in the lineup.
Sure.
So I think to the Cubs, I think there was more value in Owen Casey than maybe there was now at this time, as you mentioned, right, as of January 8th, when the trade was actually executed. But in the same breath, I think the hindsight is 100% something that they're concerned about, because you also had a healthy Kate Horton still at the trade deadline, right? You really didn't have the huge cliff fall off yet for Matthew Boyd and Shota and some of these other guys. Shota hadn't gotten banged up yet toward the end of the season as well. So there wasn't there was the urgency, but there wasn't the same level of urgency once you got to the playoffs and you had to trot out a bullpen game in Game 5 against the Milwaukee Brewers. So I do believe that you're correct on both fronts. I really do think there was some hindsight, and just at the time, the Cubs had a different need for Owen Casey. Now, Kyle Tucker's gone, and they looked at that spot and said, okay, here's what we can do. We can keep Moises Ballesteros, who I think most people around Cubs, not only fandom, but also in terms of analysts, believe that Ballesteros' bat long-term will be the better bat, even though Casey, I think, maybe gives you more power and obviously can play the outfield. But, like, if we're just taking pure, average stuff, like, Ballesteros, I think, largely is higher regarded than Owen Casey was in that breath. And then I think because the Cubs maybe had this up their sleeve, and they were saying, look, we need to not spend too much money on pitching here, so that way, we can ultimately go ahead and execute then a big move like that to acquire a Bregman when it's all said and done. A couple more comments here while we're on this here, Joey. Jed would have done Casey Hernandez in a heartbeat last year. I agree. I think, and I think there was something too for the Marlins now, because naturally, right, the price at the trade deadline is always going to be higher than the price in the offseason, because there is that immediate need, and you start to bet you essentially are betting on a team feeling that they need this piece to get over the hump and fully living in the present rather than planning for the future. Then
Yep.
you can ask for a higher price and see if somebody balks or if somebody's willing to give in and give you that value.
And you're
I think
leveraging some things too with other teams. Like, hey, if you
exactly.
don't trade this to us, we got another team who will make a trade for us that we like.
Yeah, and
And right
great
now they
point.
want it.
Exactly, and a great point here by Hawkins. Plus, Cubs were probably bidding against 8 other teams for Cabrera last year.
Yeah,
Now
that's it.
you're looking at it. My mother-in-law is coming over. My high ski is very, very excited. I apologize for the noise in the background, but you start looking at that then as also. I'm sure then the Cubs came around and said, you know what? Let's go ahead and try to make this trade. Let's go ahead and I think Jed wanted to go into the season having 7, 8, 9 arms that can start games for you, right? Look at how much they missed Javier Assad early in the season and just being able to have his versatility coming out of the pen. Ben Brown's struggles certainly put a damper in a lot of their plans as well because he just wasn't the same starting pitcher as well. There's so many kind of just little nuances that happened that I think Jed looked at it and said, you know what, screw it. We're going to make sure we have at least 8 guys that can start games for us this year because of just how delicate pitching is nowadays because of the way guys throw and everybody's throwing harder. So naturally the human body can't keep up. And we're starting to see the accumulation of injuries over time here as well. And our good friend Tyler here, who was unable to join us, unfortunately, today, jump into the comments. How we feeling, boys? I feel pretty damn good right now. Not going to lie. And I do too. And I think, to your point, Joey, talking about the actual player now, right? We've very much focused on Owen Casey as a part of this argument here. I think you're really sitting here now and saying, wow, like, this team has a huge flamethrower in Cabrera, right? And sure, some of his metrics don't completely jump off the page, but that changeup is gross. And we know the Cubs love guys that have good off speed stuff. I think they can work with his fastball in the pitch lab and improve his fastball. And I think that's just going to make that curveball that he's got and even that slider more dangerous in the future. Like he's still a young enough player where I think the Cubs see the upside of, man, we get him with Tyler Zombro and we get him in that pitch lab, he might become even a better version of himself. And again, this was also a great trade from a need to need standpoint, right? The Marlins desperately need bats. We know that. They don't desperately need pitching. They have a lot of depth in terms of pitching, both in the prospect front. You still have Sandy Alcantara, of course. There's a lot more dare I say, I guess just depth for lack of a better term, where they can say, hey, we'll go ahead and deal Cabrera now if you're willing to part ways with Owen Casey. And I think that's just it was a perfect storm when it all comes down to it. Because Cabrera's curve is arguably one of the best in baseball. It's gross the way it just falls off the face of the earth.
Yeah, he's definitely filthy. I mean, this is like it's a perfect power arm that we've been searching for because, like, even with Cade Horton, I mean, Horton is obviously we know he's still young, he's still developing, but he doesn't quite have that strikeout stuff yet. And maybe he gets that, but with Cabrera, I mean, even his changeup, which you were talking about, I mean, that average is 94 miles an hour. Like,
gross.
It's everything he throws is hard outside of maybe the curve, and the curve is still above probably average as far as velocity goes and other curveballs in the league. Like, he's got a true 5-pitch mix and he throws each pitch between, 13 to 25% of the time. So like there isn't a single pitch where I feel like he doesn't feel comfortable throwing. But like you said, the pitch lab, maybe the Cubs can bring him in and with Zombro, these guys, like they can kind of adjust what needs to be adjusted and even reach that second level of his career, which, he took a major step last year. I mean, a big part of his issues as he's grown up here and, he's only 27, but a big part of his issues has been the control, and he kept cutting the walk rate down. He's got the strikeouts, he's got the whiffs, he's got the chase, but the walk rate was something that's like, okay, 15% in, I believe it was 23. And then he cut it to 12% or something in 24. Last year, he cuts it down to about 8 point, some odd percent. And so it's like, you start to see the gradual reduction of that alone. And meanwhile, he hasn't really stop striking guys out. He's still stuck between that 25 to 27% K rate. So like he's
Mhm.
not sacrificing things to get better control. He's just
Right.
finding better control, which is an amazing thing. And then you can start seeing the real elevation of everything kind of coming full circle for him
Mhm.
as a pitcher and as he grows into himself. And I think that that's only going to get better with time. And the Cubs maybe helping him along, and you got an experienced catcher. I think don't discredit Carson Kelly's impact too. What he can do,
Definitely.
having that veteran catcher presence, and how many times do we hear throughout the season guys raving about both him and Montero and the way they call games and the way they work with pitching staffs. And, I think that could come into play here too. There's not like a catcher that really sticks out with the Marlins as being that veteran guy. I mean, I know they had Nick Fortes,
Mhm.
and guys that probably do call a decent game or are good catchers, but I think the veteran presence can help that area too. But I guess the one thing that I am a little bit concerned about when it comes to Cabrera
Mhm.
is his injury history
Sure.
and the control, obviously too, because that could also flare up and he could get worse at it again, or just maybe that was a flukier season. I don't think that's the case, but the injury history with like the impingement, the right shoulder impingement, and then he's also had some elbow issues and stuff. So they were talking about possible Tommy John. There's question marks there that I hope never really come to fruition or never flare up totally where he does have to miss a significant amount of time. But we've
Right.
seen it over the years. He can't really complete a full season. So
Yeah.
um, and that's where this whole part of like what you were saying was the depth is going to be so important with the Cubs this year because I think as what they've seen from years past and especially last year,
Mhm.
Steele's not going to start the year. Maybe we get him back May, June. Horton, you expect him to be there. Cabrera, Shota, Boyd. Boyd's had a long track record of history of injuries. Tyon's had his significant share, even though he stayed pretty damn healthy in a Cubs uniform. Um, Ray, Assad, even Brown. Like this is if he does go down for any amount of time, at least they probably feel good about where they're at to supplement that too. So they're just like, you know what? I'm going to take the high potential and the high force when he's on the mound, and we're just going to get all this collective group and say here, especially if it all comes together and they're all healthy at the right time. I mean,
Yeah.
you're set up now going into a postseason if you make it there.
Oh
Like
yeah.
they have they've got the horses, and yeah, I'm feeling really good. I do really
Yeah.
like this trade for the Cubs as far as like who they're getting from the trade. I really like.
And I think too, Hawkins brought this up a little bit earlier. 11 maybe possible starters, guys that can actually start games if injuries do accumulate. I think to that point, and another good point here. If Cabrera can develop that four seamer or is even his two seamer better, you know, he has the stuff to be a Cy Young level pitcher, assuming again he can stay healthy and complete a full season. But again, an upward trend as well, though, of how many innings he's pitched every year. And I think at least that's encouraging, despite the history of injuries, is that every given year he's ascended in terms of the number of innings he's actually pitched in a year. And I agree with you. I think the Cubs saw this and said, look, not only are we taking a high upside flyer on a guy like Cabrera who can be incredible and has the stuff. He's a unicorn in your rotation because there's nobody that throws like him right now in this Cubs rotation. A lot of
Yeah.
soft tossers or guys that are funky. He's the one guy that's truly got that I call it the sick shit where he can just completely, obliterate people off the face of the earth with his stuff. And then on top of that, though, you got this guy for 3 years of control, and he's only going to be 31 when he's a free agent. So if he does continue to improve and he stays healthy and things like that, you can, if you're the Cubs, you can turn around and pay this guy then long term and say, look what we've done. We went and got this guy early. We got him when we needed him to be cost controlled and cost effective. And then when he proved it, we were able to pay him. Or, hey, we went out and took a calculated risk on a guy who wasn't going to cost us a lot of money for 3 years. And if it doesn't work out, okay. But you took a calculated risk that again,
Yep.
I Jay Farron here says it perfectly. You can't get something without giving up something, right? And
Definitely.
that's the nature of doing business, and I think of why Casey was let go.
And
Tyler back in the comments here, just really quick, Joey. He says,
yeah,
I know a lot of fans may be upset about Owen Casey being dealt, but I look at it this way: just because a player's your number one prospect doesn't mean they'll be a superstar. He follows that up saying, and I loved Owen Casey, but let's be real: would he have been the replacement for Tucker in 26? Probably not. He may need time, more time than this current group has, which I think is also a very fascinating point and a very true point, as a lot of players are coming off the books. So this
I
does
agree.
also feel like a move of like, hey, we're trying to capitalize in 26 and see what happens with Seiya Suzuki and Ian Happ and Nico Horner potentially. We'll get to that later. Being a part of this roster right now, you've only got a handful of guys that are actually on the books for the 2027 season. It's Dansby Swanson. It's your new toy that we're going to talk about here in a second. A bunch of arbitration level guys, and I think Phil Matone is the only one that has like a semi-guaranteed contract. Otherwise it's all options. You can completely clean slate as well if you're the Cubs when it's all
Mm-hmm.
said and done. And this is another great point by Hawkins that follows up what Tyler had to say. Brennan Davis, Braylon Marquez, Christian Hernandez were all number one prospects for the Cubs at one point or another. And
Yeah.
again, they didn't reach that full potential. So everybody knows what I love to say on the show. A prospect is
Mm-hmm.
a prospect until they're no longer a prospect. And I truly feel that way. Until we know what Owen Casey is, it's a calculated bet that I'm willing to make if I'm a Cubs fan, or if in this case, if you're Jed Hoyer, to again improve a spot in your rotation that you desperately needed to improve, because you need that guy that has that nasty stuff that they really haven't had yet. And this is a fascinating thought. Cubs could treat Cabrera like the Dodgers did with the Glass now. Just be ready for October, bro. It's a fascinating point, but it's
Yeah.
kind of true. I mean, even if he isn't able to stay healthy and gets a little banged up, they want that nasty stuff when they get to October, and that's where they missed it last year. And to your
Mm-hmm.
point earlier about the hindsight as well, Joey. Anything else about the Cabrera trade you want to bring up before we talk about the other major move that just happened?
Yeah, I would say too, like following that, I think like the Marlins president of baseball operations was also saying the same thing. I mean, you can't get something to give something up. I mean, he literally said that on one of his interviews, and it's like, yeah, the Marlins. That's why it could be really just such a win-win for both sides. Is the Marlins, they can afford, like you said earlier, Ron. They develop pitching really well. It's the guys they have there right now, but then they're kind of like they keep pumping these guys out every so
Yeah.
often. So it's like, I think exactly what they needed, what we needed. And, Tyler's right. Casey wasn't guaranteed to drop right in there and be this exceptional replacement for that was an uncertainty. And that's exactly why you had to replace Kyle Tucker's bat somewhere in this lineup from free agency, from a trade, from, whatever, because we were so uncertain about what Casey really will do this year and moving forward, because he's not guaranteed to do anything. But yeah, I think in this case, Cabrera's got that track record so far of at least being really good. And I just find it really interesting with him, like how he leads with his pitches. Like it's changeup is his most thrown pitch, then it's curveball is the second most thrown pitch. Like he's an odd pitcher that we're going to get to see every 5 days at Wrigley, and I'm excited to see what he can do. So
I'll tell you what, too. Jed's got a type. He loves guys that are funky and throw weird shit, and that kind of fits what Cabrera is. And you also talk about the arm slot. I think the Cubs, more than any team in baseball, are so big about like the arm slots for guys and how that affects a hitter, and making sure you have guys that are kind of diverse in terms of where they release the baseball, because then it changes the eye level of a batter throughout the course of a game when they see 3 or 4 or 5 different arm slots in their and over the course of their at bats in any given game. That makes a huge difference. He's got like a 30-ish degree arm slot, so kind of funky, right? And then you look at what they did with the bullpen and some of those guys and how they throw a little funky as well. And that's Jed's got a type, and I'm not against it, because I think it's fascinating to see how they treat it and they're able to get there. But Joey, let's now turn to the bat that was needed to replace Kyle Tucker.
yes,
And the Cubs put their balls on the table and acquired Alex Bregman on Saturday night, a move that I don't think any Cubs fan saw coming. We knew they were kicking the tires on him. We knew they made an offer last year, and he ultimately chose the Red Sox offer. regardless of how you felt, and I'll hand up. I said there was no chance they were going to pay Bregman. I would be shocked if they paid Bregman. I'm still shocked they paid Bregman, but they did it, and it was a dollar value that I don't think any of us expected. 5 years, 175, and not only that, because that news broke around about 8:30 last night, give or take. Maybe closer to 9 o'clock was when the Bregman news broke. This morning, now we learned that 70 million of that is going to be deferred.
Crazy.
Jed Hoyer needs a gold sticky star for convincing Tom Ricketts not only to defer any money, but to defer. I'm going to do quick math here because I'm not good at it in the first place. It's got to be like almost 40% of that contract, right? The high 30s, probably 36, 37% of this contract is in deferred money. In fact, let's break out the calculator. We're gonna find out the exact number here because I'm curious. 70 divided by 175.
Get the Texas Instrument going.
40%. Nailed it. Right on the dot. So you deferred 40% of this contract to make it more manageable under your luxury tax, not only for this year, but moving forward, which, again, as we talked about with some of the tinfoil hat takes, this team's ready to be in a great position if there's a cap instituted after the new CBA comes into play. Bregman kind of still fits into that, where really you only have a handful of guaranteed contracts after the 2026 Major League season, and now he's a part of that. And even though he's 32 years old, this guy's been to 9 years in the league, 9 appearances in the playoffs. He's a career 820-ish OPS player, career 120-ish OPS plus. I mean, this guy's consistent. He plays a good third base, which how long has third base been a fucking crippling hole for the Cubs? And now all of a sudden you look around that infield and go, wow, you've got multiple Gold Glovers, guys that are capable of being Gold Glovers, Michael Busch. You're a good defensive ball club, you're a good offensive ball club, and you've beefed up pitching. The Cubs put their nuts on the table and told Major League Baseball that they're actually serious this year about being a contender by signing Alex Bregman.
Yeah, that it's a statement signing for sure, and for this, front office to do what they did, I think, just like we were talking pre-show, it's incredible to me that they even did the deferred money, because now we're talking. Now you can get into these other discussions of, it's not on the same magnitude of a Shohei Ohtani, that's for sure. We know that, but I just, for them to be able to do that and him to finally convince Tom to say, hey, look at what we can do with this. This is beneficial for our team to win. Do you want to win? Then let's do something like this. It's kind of plain and simple that way, really. I mean, it's, obviously bottom dollar is bottom dollar, but I don't think they're hurting for money by any means. So right. Let's just go ahead and do this. And I mean, yeah, it was kind of out of nowhere. It goes to show you with the Cubs again, anything that you see or hear that could potentially happen might not really happen. And anything you don't hear, it might happen, because they are just, I love this about them, because I think it does give them a competitive advantage when they're in discussions, because
well said.
You can't manipulate them through the media the same way that you can some of these other organizations. And I think there are times when you can, for sure, like when it comes to, talks about like Nico Horner, for example, or things like that they kind of,
right.
Little things get sprinkled out that way. If you're talking like contract extensions, or if you're talking potential trades, sure, there's some things that do get leaked out there that they are really working on. But when it comes to Bregman, yeah, there was these rumors, but who really took anything that was that serious? There wasn't a whole lot of smoke. Boom, out of nowhere, here comes Bregman during the middle of the Bears-Packers game when no one in their right mind, no one's thinking about the Cubs right now.
Absolutely not.
It's wow, this is, so they can do it. They just proved to us that, maybe we shouldn't be freaking out so much too. Cause and I do it. I know we all do it at times. It's well, why aren't they doing anything? Why aren't they doing anything? Well, those discussions are being had. And I think a little bit of was, not to go back to the Cabrera thing at all, or the starting pitching, but their lack of movement at the trade deadline for starting pitcher. Yes. So that carried into this offseason 100%. I believe that. it carried into this offseason of like they are not going to do shit.
Mhm.
And but we've also haven't seen a big signing since Dansby Swanson, which maybe they were just waiting for the moment to do it. I am very intrigued to get into what this means because I do think that Bregman just adds so much to consistency, like you're saying. I mean, he's in the prime of his career, but going to be 32. He's in the prime. You know what he's going to give you: 25 home runs,
Mhm.
great patience, doesn't strike out much. I was looking on his Savant. He had it was one of his like second or third highest ballparks that he or most home runs expected would have been Wrigley Field. So like even though
Love
he
that.
didn't I love that. Even though he didn't play that many games last year and he only hit, I think it was like 18 home runs or something, he definitely would have still fit into that 25, 26 range had he, played a little bit more. But I'm very intrigued to see what this means for the Cubs. Like, we all know the rumors coming up here,
Yeah.
and I know we're going to talk about that, but
Yeah, well, let's
they can do a lot. They can really do a lot.
absolutely. Let's fuck it. Let's open the can of worms. But first off, I do want to note because I also have Bregman's Savant page open. It's really fun when you look and the guy is glowing red in squaring up percentage, chase percentage, whiff percentage, K percentage, and walk percentage.
Yep.
Dare I say, and I'm fully opening the can of worms here. Dare I say that Alex Bregman at third base in terms of a bat is just a better power version of Nico Horner to an extent?
Well, there's no question about it. Yeah, it's a
But
better
they're
power version, and like the way that they play, plus walk rate, he's better than Nico at. So
yes,
like, I mean, he's definitely better than Nico in a couple areas, the walks and the home run.
and
But
I
I think he's closer to Kyle Tucker, though. I will say
sure,
that. But
absolutely.
defensively, though, they're kind of on par, right? They're pretty
Well,
close.
I think defensively, I think he's a better defender than Kyle Tucker is,
Oh,
as well,
definitely.
respected position. Really, I would argue again, and this is not apples for apples, but the difference is right. If you're making the argument that you're potentially trading Nico Horner because we know the rumors are out there, and he's really the only player that's been in the rumor mill, as you noted a little bit earlier, Joe, of just how the Cubs manipulate the media and the market, things like that. But Bregman doesn't really like run the bases all that well. He's not a base stealer. He's not gonna, Nico's the base stealer, right? Like that's what he does. He's a true, he's a four tool player. Like it's just power is not his big thing, but he does everything else well. You can make the argument Bregman's a 4-2 player as well. He just doesn't run very well, but he does everything else well as well. So, and
Mhm.
the arm's not the greatest thing in the world, but it's completely competent to play third base. And he's a competent glove at the position as well. And I think that's a big key here. I'm so intrigued though as well because to your point, I love first off, love that his expected home runs is great at Wrigley, but we've seen it, right? Right-handed hitters do better at Wrigley Field. That's just the nature of the beast, especially in that power alley to left center, right?
And he
Especially
pulls a lot of his home runs. We've seen it his whole career, really, at the Crawford boxes. I mean,
yeah,
he does that.
yeah. So I think that's really going to fit Wrigley well as well. And I'm sure that's something the Cubs understood. Like there's a reason they were at least at the table. Now, granted, I think a lot of people were very underwhelmed by their offer to him a season ago, but they went and said, like, hey, all right, you know, we did what we needed to do. We went and got the big fish this time. And on top of it, you gave him a full no trade clause. Like he wants to be in Chicago. He wants to be a Cub. And that's pretty cool when you hear that these guys are excited to still put on the Cubby blue and don the pinstripes for 81 of your 162 games a year.
How this kind of side, we're not getting into the other discussions at this point right this second, but how much do you think it played a role him seeing the Cubs compete last year, win last year, do
Mhm.
well last year for him to come here? Because he's a guy that hasn't played for many losing teams.
Right.
Like if any, I mean, this is a guy that's is a former champion. Even last year, the Red Sox were really good. I mean, I like how much do you think that weighed into his decision of I see where this team is going and how they built it up the first time,
Yeah.
and I can see a trajectory here. And like Kyle Tucker, he knows Tuck. Did I talk to him and say, hey, I really like my time there. Like the fan base
Yeah.
is great. Playing at Wrigley's great. Like, like you said, being more of it you reportedly wanted to play here last year. Yeah, that's a great point. I see that you threw that in the comments. Carter Hawkins said he reportedly wanted to play her last year. That's huge, and maybe that
Big
was
time.
something where the Cubs were, I guess, more than willing to be like, okay, you can go ahead and walk. We're not going to talk extensions during the season, or like really get into it with Tucker too, because we have a couple of options here, and
Mhm.
they must have felt really good about their chances to land, if not Bregman, one of those guys, because then I don't
Agreed.
think the Casey trade gets made either. So I
Agreed.
think they really kind of lined this stuff up all together where it
Yeah.
happened in the 1 week that it did,
Right. Yeah,
But
they needed a couple dominoes to fall in the right direction before they could fully pounce on the moves that they seemingly wanted to make. Another one here, he says he wanted a 6-year, $200 million with Boston, and opt outs if he, and then he gets 6 years to 215. I think there was some questions maybe too about the Red Sox organization and just kind of where they're going, right? Like the AL East is hyper competitive. We see it every single year. They've really failed to make a lot of big splash signings outside of Bregman a season ago. They traded away Rafael Devers, which I think could have played into Bregman being willing to bounce and move on as well. But I think the most intriguing aspect of this whole thing, too, Joey, to your point, like maybe there was some of Bregman maybe even wanting to play here even more because you saw the ascension of players like Pete Crow Armstrong and Michael Bush and key young players that are under control for 3 or 4 more seasons coming up to the big leagues. I mean, you have this coming season for Michael Bush and PCA is another pre-arb year for both of them. They don't hit arbitration until next offseason.
yeah,
I mean, that's huge having two guys that just hit 30 home runs and were a big part of your offense doing that kind of stuff. And now you can supplement that with a guy like Bregman. And again, I think what the Cubs saw in terms of the front office was Kyle Tucker is a really good player. But clearly in those Houston days, like he didn't have to be the guy and sometimes struggled when he had to be the guy. But just having that presence in the Cubs lineup ascended the production of so many other guys in this lineup, right? Say Suzuki's production took a huge jump. Michael Bush's production took a huge jump. Pete Crow Armstrong's production took a huge jump. Hell, I would argue even Dansby Swanson's production took a huge jump back to his numbers that were comparable to his days in Atlanta, where he can be your fourth or fifth or sixth best guy in terms of the bat, play great defense, and bring you that value that way. So I
mm-hmm.
think it works well because now you also can have Ballesteros a part of your lineup more often because of not adding another outfielder that would then force Seiya Suzuki to be your everyday DH again. I think they feel comfortable with Seiya playing right field every day.
Yeah, I
And
think he looked fine this last year with the times that he was out there too. I think he looked
yeah,
a lot better than he did previously.
definitely. And I think they're also going to find ways to maybe if the matchup doesn't play well for having Ballesteros in the lineup for some reason, maybe you see a Kevin Alcantara as your fourth outfielder playing right field, and then you can DH say on those days, right? And you have a couple of really good athletes out there in the outfield then with guys like Happ and PCA to track down fly balls and help your pitchers out as well. So I am just still genuinely dumbfounded that they actually did it because
It is.
it really felt like the Cubs were going to be all about, hey, if we're going to acquire like game changers, we're going to trade for these guys, right? We saw it with the Kyle Tucker trade a season ago. We saw it this year with the Edward Cabrera trade now, right? It felt like that was kind of how the Cubs approach things. Keep a good farm because then you can trade those pieces to get pieces that you need. And I think that's the right approach, and teams should still do that. I mean, the Dodgers just said the Dodgers are once again the top farm in baseball. Shocking. Go figure.
Yeah, it's every year
But
almost.
now, now you've got an opportunity here with a guy like Bregman to just say, "Hey, man, we're going to make a deep lineup, and this thing's going to be a lot of fun this year." Carter Hawkins here. Mo Baller can equal Tucker's hitting stats: 266, 23 homers, 73 homers. I agree. I think Mo Baller is going to hit for a higher average than Kyle Tucker did.
Possibly. I want to tread lightly though with that power production because I don't know if that's yet in his bag.
Wheelhouse, yeah.
But I also don't even want to put that prediction like expectation. He can. I don't want to put the expectation on him at this part of his career
Sure.
though either. You know what I mean?
And I don't think the expectation has to be on him now
Does
because
it?
I mean, let's play a game, Joey. We like games here. Let's play a game. Your lineup, it includes a 30 home run Michael Busch, a 30 home run Pete Crow Armstrong, a 30 home run Seiya Suzuki, a 25 home run Alex Bregman, a 20 to 25 home run Dansby Swanson. Currently, a 10 to 15 home run Nico Horner, who's going to hit for high average. Ian Happ, who's going to at least give you 20 to 25 home runs and pretty consistent in terms of what he does at the plate. Like Mo Baller's your eighth or ninth option on this team right now.
Yeah, he doesn't have to kill the ball at all.
He doesn't. He can hit. He can hit in that like 7th and 8th hole and just grow and let him kind of figure things out. Kind of what they've done with PCA. And I think that's I think also a big thing with like the Craig Counsell difference too, right? He can shelter some of these young guys in a way where they can still make an impact, but they can make an impact without having to be the guy and feel all the pressure as a young player in the major leagues. And I think that's incredibly key. And then, yeah, we didn't even talk about catcher, but Amaya Kelly can absolutely get you 25 homers. Now, granted, I think Kelly's offensive numbers last year were a little above what we should expect, at least, or at least the expectation, but it showed it's in there, especially when you have a deep lineup and he's able to hit low and, last year, especially mash lefties, which is where he made his living.
I totally agree with, we should expect a little bit of a decline from that was a little bit outlier performance from Kelly, but he does have a little pop. And I still truly believe that Miguel Amaya is on the up and up. I think he's still ascending. You saw it last year before the injuries. Like, he was starting to really come into his own. So maybe there is that 25, at least combined. Who cares? We'll take it.
I mean, if they're both giving you roughly 80 games a season, like you'll take 13 home runs out of a catcher for 80 games. And then, if you get to that 25 number out of your catching position, you are in a great fucking spot when it's all said and done. And then, eventually Amaya is going to become your guy, and Amaya absolutely can take it up a level. And I think as long as he can stay healthy, I think that's genuinely going to happen. But Joey, we got to address the elephant in the room. Chris Cole said this a little bit earlier. Don't trade Nico or Shaw. I don't think Shaw is necessarily going anywhere, but the Nico Horner thing is too loud to not address because there's been multiple reports of it, right? It's not just like a one-time thing and it kind of fades into the background. It's kind of been reinforced a few times over the course of this offseason now that Nico Horner's name has been at least out there. Now, whether that's the Cubs just saying, hey, we'll listen, we're not necessarily going to trade him, but we'll listen. Do you think now that they've acquired Bregman that this ups the reason to move Nico?
I don't know if it ups the reason to, but I do think it ups the chance that it could happen, if that makes sense. Because I don't know if there's really a real reason to, but I'll take a step back and go with this. Like, I remember saying this a while back, and I was saying, we should trade Nico a couple of years ago, and we were in the middle of the season, and he was kind of struggling a little bit, but I knew he wasn't at quite his peak value. But I always kind of looked at him as and I'm gonna say something, and then I'm gonna kind of go above that. Right. I looked at him as a similar player to what Starlin Castro, those kinds of players where they don't have the pop, but they have, they have other attributes that you like, the bat to ball skills and etc. And then you can kind of move on from those guys and get better bats around them and kind of plug in the hole that he leaves, right? That's kind of what my idea was, because you had bigger needs elsewhere. But now with that said, Nico is such a complete player as far as his defense goes and his hitting and the engine. He's such an engine when it comes to this team, like the stealing, everything. He's so much better than what Starlin Castro or any of those guys that, I even had as like a comparison tool to use of like maybe they drop him off and kind of fill in the pieces with like a Matt Shaw or something like that and plug around, or James Triantos as he was coming up, you plug in that and all of a sudden you have a stud third baseman, whatever else. But I'll say this, at this point, I wouldn't move him because I think that this is a very complete team as far as offense goes with the addition of Bregman. And, maybe if you wanted to make another move elsewhere, for right field or for DH or something to kind of solidify things and not be so reliant on Alcantara as a platoon option or Mo Baller at DH, then yeah, you can do that. But without Nico, that opens up another question mark.
Sure.
I don't like question marks, Ron. I don't know. I don't want to go into a season where it's like, all right, what are we doing? Because now you deal with another issue, and Matt Shaw has to get back used to playing middle infield again because
Right.
he came up middle infielder, moved to third base. His third base, can he play third base? The arm, we know he probably plays better on the closer to first base, but he showed he could play third base really well. I would just prefer if they hung on to him, but I guess it kind of depends. Like, what are you going to get out of that deal? Because if it's a situation where you're talking about, you got to make a decision on him one way or another. You don't want to lose him for nothing. You don't want to. Are you going to extend him? Because then that's the next question, right? Like, is he part of where your dollars are going as all these contracts kind of go off the books, or do you get something for him now? Because I feel like at this moment, going into 2026, Nico Horner can be a huge reason why you're winning games. And so that's why I understand why we don't want to get rid of him. And
yeah,
it's a hard battle. Like, that's the constant battle of the GMs too. Of like, do we think future? Do we think now? I think you got to think now at this point. If you're the Cubs, though, like you've waited too long to not think now at this point.
I agree, and there's some great points here from Carter Hawkins in the comments. So I'm gonna share a few of them. One of them, he says, dealing Nico makes zero sense. Why go all in with Cabrera and Bregman and then deal Nico? Following that up, saying only a contender would deal for Nico, and what would they send the Cubs in return that the Cubs would need? And then notes, you can still get Shaw probably 450 to 500 at bats as a super utility player. You could play third, short, and second, and maybe you even teach them how to play a little bit of left field or something just to get an extra
Sure.
day out of them. Or you can DH them on any given day, right? Like there is versatility with a player like Matt Shaw. I think I really think the key with the Nico Horner thing is he a part of the future after this year? Because let's talk about some of the key pieces that are falling off the books. Obviously, we know what's on the pitching side, and that really doesn't impact this argument right now. But understanding how many dollars are coming off the books, it does, right? Shoda's 22 millions coming off the books. Jameson Tyone's 18's coming off the books. Matt Boyd's 17 is potentially falling off the books because it's, I believe, a mutual option for a third year on Matthew Boyd. So that's a lot of money just in those three pitchers alone coming off the books here in the not so distant future.
Kelly.
Then you include, right? Yeah, Carson Kelly is an option, but he's coming off the books. Seiya Suzuki's another 19 million coming off the books. Ian Happ's another 20 million coming off the books. And Nico Horner's coming off the books at about 12 million bucks. There's a lot of money to be had. So the question does become who of those players, which I don't think any of the pitchers get re-signed, if I'm being completely and brutally honest. I don't think any of those names we just said stay, unless they pick up Boyd's option and give him 1 year and then he retires or something. I really think right now, I don't think Seiya Suzuki's back. I think if he is back, I think Ian Happ's back at a lower dollar number if he's coming back. So you could absolutely afford Nico Horner. So it's just the question of, do you see him as your future everyday second baseman, or are you content with a guy like Matt Shaw potentially having that position for the long term, or at least for the near term, and trying to maximize on a value of Nico Horner? But to Carter Hawkins' point, what are the Cubs going to get? This was something that you and I kind of briefly kicked around in the pre-show, was just what would the Cubs even try to get? Are you trying to make a one-for-one deal to address a bullpen need, address a starting pitcher need, or are you just trying to get prospect capital in return? But that feels very anti what they're trying to do right now. So I agree. I also wonder this, and this is maybe a little bit tinfoil hat. I wonder if the Cubs are kicking the tires on Nico Horner's value so they know what's a fair number to offer him for another contract. To me, that's where it makes sense that his name's out there, because if you've got 4 or 5 or 6 teams lining up and they say, we love this guy, we want to extend him, he'd be a piece of our future, or if teams think he's going to go back to shortstop, then you quickly learn, Nico Horner's got a lot of value. Are we going to be able to give him the dollars that he wants to stay, Or do we say, hey, Nico, we love you, but you're going to get paid way more than we're comfortable paying you. And because of that, we're going to move you now, and you could go to New York and take over for Anthony Volpe at shortstop and be the guy with the Yankees or whatever, and figure out the rest from there. To me, it's all about what his next contract value is, and because I do believe the Cubs truly want to keep him and Dansby Swan together for as long as possible. But you got to find a number that makes sense, because paying your second baseman $20 million a year isn't always considered the most, smart financial investment if we're talking baseball.
Here's the thing, too. As you're talking, I'm starting to think about this a little bit more, too. Where did the conversation even begin when it comes to the trade talks? That all started, I think the first rumor that we heard was
the Giants?
Teams were asking about Nico Hoerner. Right? So I think a little bit of this, and this is what I thought at the time, was agent trying to leverage this into a contract extension talk. Mm-hmm. And so maybe this is all a little bit of smoke and mirrors of the Cubs are actually going out there and looking to move Nico, but it could be a little bit like you said, and they're trying to figure out what his value is. And other teams, why wouldn't you have interest in Nico Hoerner? He doesn't cost you a lot. He's a great player. Now, $20 million, we all know how, I don't know what his contract value would come to on an annual basis or what his actual value is at this point, but we all know how much analytics and stats drive these things, these conversations of numbers. So when you look at just his stats alone, you look at, WRC plus and above and all that, and home runs, those two things, and walk rate, those three things, they start to add up against him when you look at the overall of the player. Now, he's overall a guy you have to have on your team. Like, this is a guy that's a great player, and we saw too.
He's a 6-WAR player. I mean,
he's incredible. So if you just look at WAR, especially this last year, like it's that, right? But like there are little things that you can kind of look at and say, all right, not sure about. Like he's not quite in the $20 million range, or he's not. You know what I mean? So like the Cubs being who they are, always trying to be smart financially, I could see how this could be a real major question for whether they should extend him or not. And to your point too, I'm not trading him for prospects. Sorry, if you want to add one in, fine. Like a flyer lotto ticket guy as like a kicker on the deal, fine. But it has to be something that's going to help us now. Otherwise, to me, there's zero chance or zero reason to move Nico Hoerner. Like it's a guy that you built. This is a guy you built the foundation of where this team is right now. So it's
I think it's a fascinating thing. This is the biggest one though that I completely agree. Does Nico want shortstop money? Right? That's where you start to beg the question, because 5 for 125 is a lot of money for a second baseman. And
I don't think he will get that, but does he want it? Maybe. Sure.
Right. So, and to Carter here's point, Mariners wanted Nico. So it really does. It sounded like it was the Yankees, the Mariners, and the Giants all kicking the tires on Nico Hoerner. It wasn't necessarily the Cubs giving away Nico Hoerner. It was more so them saying, hey, teams are calling us about Nico.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean we're actively trading Nico Hoerner. But again, I really think that the value on that next contract is where this conversation becomes fascinating, because I think that's something the Cubs are actively having to weigh right now when it's all said and done. Interesting comment here from Uncle Tay says they paid Bregman when they already had Bregman and Shaw. I think Bregman's a far better player than Shaw, at least right now. Shaw might fucking make us all eat our shit and be a really good player, but we don't know. In the current moment, we don't know that. And speaking of Shaw, Uncle Tay here says IPAC is Shaw, Ballesteros, and Alcantara to go get Jordan Alvarez. I think that's fascinating.
That's wild.
But I don't think it's going to happen, because Houston still needs somebody to hit the baseball after losing all those guys over the last handful of years.
Not only is it not going to happen, but it's kind of a ridiculous trade to even consider, even if you're the Cubs, because I would love Alvarez. Don't get me wrong. But if you get rid of those three guys, plus Casey, plus everything else you've already given up, you leave yourself no options for backup plans as far as who's coming up the pipe that we have built this thing on. So, like, as far as hitting goes, I mean, Alcantara, Shaw, Moises, like, you're kind of running out of these guys that are starting to come up the pipe. And you just said all the guys that are coming off the books next year. We need some of those team-friendly guys to
Correct.
step in along with the PCAs, the Bushes, and
Absolutely.
Shaw was one of those names. Like, I don't want to
Right.
give up all that.
Well, and you got to remember too, right? With like PCA and Bush, they're going to start hitting arbitration next year, so they're going to start costing more money. Now, granted, it's going to be controllable money, but money nonetheless. That those are things they're going to have to work on. And I think this was a fascinating comment. This from a little bit earlier from Carter Hawkins. He says you could deal Alcantara, Triantos, and Long to get younger prospects. Right? These three are largely considered closer to major league ready.
Sure.
Those three guys are losing value every passing day, and I do think that is fascinating. But again, I don't know if that's necessarily what the Cubs want to do because they've had a lot of success in the draft. They don't really have to go trade for prospects. They can just keep loading up talent and then flipping these guys and sending them elsewhere. Look at Zaire Hope and Jackson Ferris going to the Dodgers for Michael Bush, right?
Mm-hmm.
That was a great example of you took advantage of a situation where Michael Bush was blocked at two positions by arguably a pair of Hall of Famers. For sure, Freddie Freeman being a Hall of Famer, but Max Muncy, a very good player as well for a long, long time. And the Dodgers desperately needed far away talent in their prospect pool because they had a lot of guys close to the major leagues as well. And on their 40 man, it was a beautiful deal that worked for everybody. And the Cubs were able to do that because they had that prospect capital. And I think that's what they're going to continue to do is load up more through the draft than through trade. So that's why I sit here and just I bring up this whole idea that if Nico Horner was to be dealt, it would have to be for a major league player to upgrade something else. But I don't know what you're really upgrading on this team after the moves that they've just made in the last week. So I think too, and you brought up a great point, Joey, that I think people got to remember. All the thoughts of people saying, well, the Cubs are probably or maybe going to trade Nico Horner is just pure speculation from some of these insiders. Nobody knows for sure. And to your point, all the reports that came out are not the Cubs are actively shopping Nico Horner. It's these teams are checking in with the Cubs on Nico Horner. And that's why
that's all.
Yeah, and that's why these are continuing to kind of build up. So I really think it's going to be, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens.
If there's a position that, like you were saying, what would they go and get as far as, what do they need now that they've made these two big moves and they've already kind of supplemented the bullpen? And I do think that if there is a spot, it's got to be bullpen. But how many teams are actively trading bullpen in the offseason? Like the offseason doesn't feel like the bullpen trade time. It's usually in season. And so I don't think that's really a move that the Cubs are going to be able to make, even if that's something that they're considering.
And I think Uncle Ted makes sense. And again, this is why he's kind of banging the table here for Yordan Alvarez. It's because the Cubs don't have that power left-handed bat. I mean, you can make the argument Michael Bush is a power left-handed bat. Like, let's not forget that Michael Bush exists.
Yeah.
And PCA has shown he has power, even though that's not his calling card per se as a player. But I absolutely think you can make the argument that, to your point, Joey, right? If you're going to upgrade something, you can still make the argument that Seiya Suzuki's better off as your DH every day and maybe find an everyday right fielder. Maybe you find that lefty power bat, or maybe he's not even a humongous power bat, right? Maybe he's a 20 home run power bat, but that's still that lefty pop that you need and you really haven't had, sans Kyle Tucker and Cody Bellinger over the last handful of years, right? And some of these young guys. So again, just I'm curious to see because I really don't think that Nico's going to get traded. I just think it's all smoke and mirrors and bullshit at this point.
Belly's still out there, right?
He is, but the reports were that like the Yankees have offered him like $30 million a year for 7 years.
I thought they were on the outs with them though.
Oh, I don't know. Unless it's changed since the last time I saw that. I mean, it feels like it changes every 3 hours.
Was it today? Oh, okay. Was it today or something that you saw?
No, it was. I think it was within the last week. I admittedly don't read a lot of Yankees blogs, so
when their fan base is calling Owen Casey scraps in a trade, you don't really need to pay too much attention to what the Yankees are doing because
they think facial hair is. Never mind. I'm not going to go on a tangent about the Yankees being a stupid fucking organization, but
we don't need to do that. But I'm just thinking, like, is there a chance that they go all nuts out? Like balls to the wall, say, let's bring, even if it's 3-4 years, high AAV, and they go get Belly. Is there a chance where and he gives you flexibility? He can play first. We know he can play
all 3 outfield spots. Yeah. I mean, that I think that was the fascinating thing when the Bellinger rumors began before the Bregman signing was just it makes sense because he can play multiple positions, right? Like he plays effectively four spots plus your DH, right? Where I know I hear you, Uncle Ted. I hear you banging the table for Jordan, but Jordan's only a DH. That's all he can do. Like
And he's got injury history too. He's not
he does.
perfect.
Right.
He's not.
Right.
I love Jordan as a hitter.
Oh
I'm
yeah,
just
and Jordan's sick, but
who
I
doesn't
also don't
want
think
Jordan?
Houston just signed Tatsuya Imai. They're not just like bowing out and getting rid of. The reason they traded Kyle Tucker was because they weren't going to pay him, and look at how that worked for them. They got Isaac Paredes and Cam Smith, so like it worked out for the Astros, and that's why they made that deal. I don't see them making that deal to get rid of Jordan. And if they did, I don't know if the Cubs are the team necessarily that might pounce on that. And there's some interesting thoughts here in the comments, calling up San Diego to see what Mason Miller costs. Tyler wrote an article kind of about this with the Padres. I think the last couple of moves have maybe since kind of dimmed the original trade that Tyler was talking about, but the Mason Miller thing is certainly still fascinating. It's there's a lot of just really, I don't know, man. It would be very interesting. Don't get me wrong, right? If they were to go out and kick the tires on Bellinger, I just they're pretty much at that like cap hit number now because I think they're at 240, which I believe is just over that first threshold. And I don't think they're going to want to go much higher than that.
That's probably you're probably way more right than I am with the speculation part of it. I just am thinking
I didn't think they were going to sign Alex Bregman. I'm not going to sit here and pretend I know everything. In fact,
but
I've enjoyed being wrong this season.
I didn't think they were getting Bregman either. What I mean? But I'm just thinking like if they really, and I like what Tyler was thinking with Mason Miller and the comment there too. Like Mason Miller would be a tremendous piece to add. I'm with you on that. Like I'm in the same ballpark of now these moves have kind of made it so you don't need to make a desperate or not necessarily desperate, but you don't have to make that huge splash now after you've done that, right?
Yeah. I want to. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I just think that would have been like one of your biggest splashes of the offseason if you're going to do that. Now they've kind of made those moves, you know?
Yeah, and Carter Hawkins says here with the Bregman deferred money, they are $6 million below the first threshold. We don't know what the deferral is yet. I know we know it's 70, but based on how long it's deferred out. So this is what happened with Shohei Ohtani. So for anybody that remembers, Shohei Ohtani had 68 million of the 70 that he technically would have earned per year deferred. So he's technically only being paid $2 million a year of actual money, but his luxury tax value is still $40 million a year because of the duration and the length and the money of the contract. So that's going to play into this. And the speculation is that Bregman's still going to be about $31 million. And I believe Spotrac has that listed at 32.5 right now for luxury. That still puts them at 240. So, there's, again, they have some flexibility, but are they going to use it because they've already gone out and made these huge deals? I don't know. And I think that's where we're really going to have to wait and see what happens. I think once we know the entire, and yes, they calculate present day value for the future dollars. Exactly. I think once we know the exact details of that, that's when I think maybe then the real speculation of like, okay, what are the Cubs going to do potentially in addition yet? I think they could make like one more like lower level signing, especially for like a bench bat, because I think that's the one thing they're lacking right now, even though you can technically say Matt Shaw becomes a bench bat now, which is kind of nice to have.
I like your idea of teaching him some other positions. So like, let's teach him left. Let's teach him right. He's athletic enough. He's got wheels. What if he learns center field? He's a backup or platoon option in center field too. I'm not saying Kevin Alcantara wouldn't just plug in and be that guy, but I mean, it's, if you could kind of move him around and say, you don't want Seiya out there and right and want him DH and I think, just teach him, have him learn this stuff in spring training. But yeah, I'm kind of with you. Like, we're going to have to wait and see like what they have left and what they really want to spend over the tax. Like that's a question that we don't even know the answer to of like, do they want to go over at all? Like now at this point, if there was no deferred money, which there is, and we just don't know the number of it, then there wouldn't be really any other moves to be making without a trade.
Because he'd be 35 then against the luxury tax if there wasn't deferrals. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm kind of the belief like they're still going to beef up a little bit more of the pen for sure. Maybe not much, but I think that there's still something there. Which shout out Juice from a long time ago, Hunter Harvey. He finally got Hunter Harvey.
Dude, I texted Juice the day that he signed, and I was like, "You were just 3 years early, big dog," but it finally happened.
I almost texted him too. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm happy that we got him though. He's a good
Hunter Harvey.
Good arm.
They've really made some fascinating bullpen additions this year. And again, I think that's a lot of the Craig Council impact too, of being like, hey, let's go get some of these guys and like have dudes that are ready and can go from there. Interesting one here, Mike Talkman, bringing back the Palatine Pounder, maybe.
I like that. I love Mike Talkman.
Certainly would be fascinating. Another fun one here from Uncle Ted. Imagine an outfield with Brenton Doyle is the name that he says here in PCA. That's platinum. Do we forget that Ian Happ's won 4 Gold Gloves in a row?
Yeah.
Like, I know everybody wants to shit on Ian Happ, but like the dude's consistent. He's won the Gold Glove the last 4 years in left field. Like
he's fine out there. Yeah.
He's just, he knows how to play the position well, and he plays it well at Wrigley too, which is obviously a huge piece of it because of the dimensions of the ballpark and things like that.
He made the best catch I've ever seen in person that game we were
at
on the left field line.
God, that was unbelievable. Yeah, to this day I agree that in person that's the best catch I've ever seen.
Nothing like that. Like that's do or die, full out. Just it doesn't get better than that. So yeah, Hap can play left field just fine, and we don't even question that.
Yeah, and this is an interesting idea though. Hap, Doyle, PCA as your outfield, and then Gold Glovers at every infield spot. I mean, it's a nice problem to have. They're going to be a very good defensive baseball team this year, and that's again the Cubs built that way, right? All the bullpen guys they added, ground ball pitchers. Edward Cabrera, believe it or not, a pretty high ground ball rate for a guy that throws as hard as he does because of all the off speed stuff with the changeup and the curve. So they have built this team to play to the strengths of what they already have. And I'll tell you what, man, and we talked at the end of the season last year. I talked to people during the off season and I just told them how much this team pissed me off, especially in the second half last year and then just into the off season. And, feeling like Tom wasn't going to ever like treat this team like it should be treated and give the Cubs fans what they, in my opinion, absolutely deserve, because it's one of the most passionate fan bases in all of baseball. They wrote me and reeled me the fuck back in.
Let's go
with these moves.
Let's go.
And I'll tell you what, man, it's exciting. It's dare I say almost a sigh of relief of like both of these moves, getting Edward Cabrera, getting Alex Bregman. It's like the Cubs are acting like a team that should be the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah.
And that to me is what gives me the kind of grace and peace of this whole thing is like, good. They went out and did it now. Go out on the diamond every day from the end of March until September and into October and give it your all and try to go win this fucking thing before the CBA expires. And maybe we're without baseball in 27 because we don't know.
It's fine by me if they win in 26. I don't care.
Hell yeah, that's just a year. That's just a year-long party into the next year for everybody. If that's the case, it would be electric for sure, Joey. Joey, I want to turn it back over to you really quick. We're an hour and 10 minutes here. A good 70-minute show already. Any final thoughts from you?
Beautiful, man. Beautiful. This is awesome. I'm glad that we were able to talk for this. It wasn't hard to get to where we needed to be. I do think there's one thing I wanted to say about Christian Hernandez is that, maybe he eventually turns into something, but we know he was a top, prospect for a long time or for a while, but they signed him when he was so young. It just feels like we're never going to ever miss that. He's never going to turn into baby A-Rod. Like he was, the comparisons were made to him or anything like that. I don't think, but, I wish him the best too, because you're trying to track him and follow him throughout his young career. And, hopefully they get somebody good with him. And De Leon too, like high exit velocities, but like he's a kind of lotto ticket dude.
Yeah.
So all in all, man, I'm super thrilled with what the Cubs got going on here. And, it looks like I will say, I'm a little bit like, oh man, wish we were going to CubsCon this year because, I know we were talking about, oh, we don't want to do the 10-year anniversary celebration and
Yeah.
all that, but now it's like there's actual real stuff that we can see and talk about when we're there. So I'm a
Yeah.
little bit like, that's the one part of me that's like, damn, dude, it's next week. Like, I wish we were going, but
I
it's all
agree.
good.
I will miss being with all the guys at CubsCon. It has been a fun yearly thing that we've done over the last few years, to see everything that's transpired. Quick final thought from Uncle Ted, among others. Morhone and Halverson, he's saying go get some more guys from Colorado, completely raid the Colorado Rockies. What he's looking the Cubs to still do before this offseason's over. I'll tell you what, man, I'm right there with you though in terms of just excitement for what the Cubs have done, and we're going to be able to talk about it more, and we'll all be in person as we start to plan for opening day, and us attending as we've done in years past, and we'll have plenty of time to catch up with it then when we get down to the north side of the city and get ready for opening day baseball at Wrigley Field. It's going to be absolutely electric shit when it's all said and done, man. And I can't wait. I cannot wait.
We're not missing opening day. That's one tradition that will never get broken at this point. We're
I agree.
every single year. And if I have to like come and lift you into or take you from an airport, like in LA or something, Ron, if your career ever takes you like somewhere else, like I'm flying to you and dragging you to Wrigley opening day.
Always,
That's happening.
dude. Always. I can't wait. And this year for me, actually, is going to be fun because it's the day before my birthday. So it's a little bit of a early birthday celebration as well,
Hell yeah.
which will be a lot of fun. But other than that, man, Cubs did shit. It's really cool to see. And, this was the makeup show. We were unfortunately not able to run the Edward Cabrera show due to unforeseen circumstances, but I think it worked out pretty damn well when it's all said and done. As always, want to encourage everybody head over to ontapsportsnet.com. Be sure to head over to YouTube as well. Like, subscribe, hit that bell button over at OnTap Sportsnet on YouTube. When all of our shows go live, including us here, it comes on tap. And of course, you know the drill. Follow all the boys. Give everybody some love. OnTapSportsNet.com and at OnTap Sportsnet on the socials. The OnTap Sports Network. Go check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. Joey, what do you say? Get out here the only way we know how. It comes on tap.
There's a new sheriff in town. And it's not Andrew Chafin. It's Caleb Williams and the Chicago Bears. Bear down. And let's go Cubbies. And fuck the Cardinals.
FTC as always. Absolutely bear down, baby. And let's go Cubbies.